Yep.
Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. Casey Porter joined by Austin Brubaker, as I am each and every Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about, lots of 40-man stuff to talk about. Hey, the announcement that probably the Dodgers are going to bring back Jason Hayward. That fills out all 40 spots in the 40-man, so we're going to talk about that. Austin's also going to talk about, hey, this being the hot stove season, teams they don't have to look at what a guy's done in the past. What they need to be trying to figure out is what performance are they going to get in the future so they can know what kind of value they're actually buying. Austin wrote a tremendous article on that today. Released that on Dodgers Daily. Matter of fact, I'm going to put the link to that here in the chat here in just a second. So, Austin, first of all, awesome article and welcome in.
Well, thanks for having me, Casey. Yeah, it was a lot of fun writing that. That was actually the first article that I've written for Dodgers Daily. I know I've done obviously a bunch of work on air, kind of covering the Dodgers and talking specifically a lot about the Loons and about players from a lot of the other teams. It's a it's a time where a lot of teams are looking to acquire talent, and you want to do this in the smartest way possible. You want to get talent that is going to impact your teams for the future. So a lot of this is about forecasting, it's about predicting what an individual is going to do. And the Dodgers have to do that with their 40-man roster right now. Obviously, and I'm sure we'll get into this because we haven't had the chance to talk about this, it is not technically official yet, meaning the Dodgers haven't announced it through their social media yet. But Jason Hayward is going to be coming back to the Dodgers. That has been leaked. That is what the assumption is out there. He'll be coming back on a 1-year, $9 million contract. That fills up the Dodgers 40-man roster. So I'm sure we'll get into the 40-man roster, just the output, because the way the roster is constructed right now, they haven't necessarily made any drastic improvements from what they were last season. There are still holes that need to be addressed. And with there not being any room on the 40-man roster, remember, both Dustin May and Cody Gonsolin can't be moved to the 60-day injured list until spring training starts. There are going to have to be moves that have to be made if you want to add talent into this roster. So we'll have, I'm sure, some discussion about that and about the signing of Jason Hayward.
Yeah, not only have they not made any improvements, they haven't made any changes really. I mean, they offered contracts to all of the ARB eligible, all 12 ARB eligible players that were in the system. So that took up 12. I've mentioned several different times, when you're talking about these guys like Jason Hayward, it's not about their salary. The money's not the issue. The cost is the roster spot. So if the Dodgers want to go out and get a Shohei Ohtani, who is a free agent, or a Yoshinobu Yamamoto, correct,
Yes.
which is a free agent,
Yes.
that means they have to figure out how to clear 2 spots on the 40-man roster, period, in a discussion. So there's 2 ways to do that. You can either DFA somebody who's on the roster, of which we're going to go over tonight some of the guys that we think are the most likely, that if the Dodgers went the DFA route, who would they be? Or you can, in a trade, you can trade away. Now, this tells you that if the Dodgers make a trade for a big name or whatever, that in that trade, because the person they're going to trade for coming over is going to be on the 40-man, so in that trade, it's going to have to be players in your system that are already on the 40-man. Otherwise, the trade doesn't make sense at this point because you're not clearing up 40-man space. So, it looks like there's going to have to be a trade made here for the Dodgers, one or more trades, and it's going to have to be with guys that are already on the 40-man. Would I be correct there?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that is kind of what has been highlighted by the moves the Dodgers have made. Not only have they decided to bring back Jason Hayward, which, as you mentioned, could be a very good sign. He was a really good player last season. The cost of that is not necessarily in the financials. You're not really worried about the financials if you're the Dodgers, and especially at a 1-year deal. You're worried about the 40-man roster spot and the opportunity costs. And some of that also comes not just from the move to bring back Jason Hayward, but also with the arbitration eligible players. They decided for all of the relief pitchers, the Ryan Yarboroughs, the Yency Almontes, all the Victor Gonzalez, all of those guys, they decided to offer a contract through arbitration for them. They could have just decided to move on from them and allow that to clear up a roster spot. They didn't decide to go down that route. Instead, electing to keep those guys on their roster, which is taking up some roster space similar to what Jason Hayward is. So what that is alluding to as far as the moves the Dodgers are going to make in the future, especially if they are looking to add additional talent, which they desperately need to get over that hump, they are going to have to make some sort of moves, likely to trade, because the guys that they have on their 40-man roster are likely too talented to just by themselves designate for assignment, which is bringing up some of the rumors of some of the potential trade targets. I know there's been a lot of discussion recently about talks picking up for a guy like a DylanCease. There's a lot of rumors out there, but just looking at the 40-man roster, assuming that the signing of Jason Hayward becomes official, that is 40, meaning some of those guys on that 40-man roster, if you want to bring other people in, unless you hope that they don't sign until after spring training starts, which is totally unrealistic, there are going to have to be moves on the Dodgers roster.
So let's start with this. Of course, I think the Dodgers are going to try to figure this 40-man roster crunch out via trade first. And then if they can't, then if they have to resort to DFA guys, I think that'll be second resort. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that is the most likely. You could also go with the theory with all these guys being kept in from being designated for assignment, that they are keeping those guys just as some sort of depth on their roster, knowing that they could designate for assignment and take the financial hit. Other teams might not be willing to take the financial hit. The Dodgers, they're the Dodgers. They have a bunch of money. They can go ahead and do that if they need to. If the opportunity arises, they might just be keeping them around just in case things don't work out with the number of free agents that they might be hoping to bring in. But I think it is certainly true that some of the guys that are on the 40-man roster right now will at the very least not be on the 40-man roster coming up within the next month or two.
Yeah, and the winter meetings are coming up. So did you have any guys that you thought off the top of your head that you thought would be the first guys that might be DFA'd, or do you want me to go over the list?
You can go ahead and bring up the list and we can kind of discuss that. It's really tough right now because I know a lot of the guys got put, or at least they were arbitration eligible. Dodgers offered them a contract. That kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into the system as far as who the Dodgers might be first on the list. There's only maybe a handful of names that I could think of potentially right now, but go ahead and bring up the list.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the guys that aren't going to get DFA'd, right? Yeah, I think it's easier to do that. Nick Frasso, agreed?
Agreed, yes.
Tony Gonsolin, Brusdar Graterol, Michael Grove, Kyle Hurt, Landon Knack, Dustin May, Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, Evan Phillips, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Blake Trinan, Ricky Vanasco. I know I've heard that name, but they literally just signed him like last week to a major league contract. They're not going to sign him to a major league contract and DFA him. They're not going to do that.
No.
Let's see. Austin Barnes, Hunter Fiducia. They just put him on the 40-man. They're not going to take him off. Will Smith, Michael Busch. They're not going to DFA him. Freddie Freeman, Gavin Lux, Max Muncy, Miguel Rojas. 100% chance, no DFA?
I say it is very unlikely right now because of his positional versatility, because his ability to fill in at short. I think you need some of that just depth, just as an insurance policy for Gavin Lux. I would say it's very, very, very unlikely he gets DFA'd.
Chris Taylor? See, I mean, you could make the argument that Chris Taylor would be the depth at shortstop too, but
you could, yes.
Yeah, Miguel Vargas is not going to get DFA'd. Well, we'll go on. Mookie Betts, Johnny DeLuca is not going to get DFA'd. James Outman not going to get DFA'd. Andy Paez not going to get DFA'd. So that leaves. All right, let's go through the list. Yency Almonte, Any chance?
Again with him. He was just arbitration eligible. Dodgers could have moved on and tried to figure out a minor league deal. Decided to offer him a contract. I would say that he's not first up on the list, but he could be a potential option for the Dodgers.
We're not talking about the Dodgers wanting to do it. What we're talking about is the Dodgers find a couple of free agent targets, and they have to figure out, and they haven't come up with a trade scenario where they can figure out how to get Ohtani or a Yamamoto on the 40-man without DFA-ing somebody. That's the scenario we're talking about here, right? I think they're going to try to trade like 3 guys on the 40-man and get 1 guy back, right? Which would open 2 slots on the 40-man. I think that's the way they're going to go. First of all, would you maybe trade a Yorbit Vivas and a Gavin Stone to get a pitcher back, right? And so that way it makes sense. I think that's what they're going to try to do first.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be, with the way the roster is constructed right now, what they probably would have to do in order to get some starting pitching back. And then if you're looking to add additional talent as well, that would open up some spots for them.
So let's say you go get a number 1 pitcher. Okay, give me a trade prospect. CorbinBurnes?
Sure. Let's go with
Okay,
CorbinBurnes.
so let's say that you give up a Gavin Stone, a Yorbit Vivas, and who else do you think you'd have to give up that's on the 40-man right now? Diego Cartaya?
That would certainly be an option, just because he's not ready for the big leagues yet, so the Dodgers wouldn't necessarily feel that hit, and it would be somebody on the 40-man roster. That certainly could be the case.
And that's a position of depth. That's a big one for the Dodgers. It's got to be, like the outfield's not a position of depth, right? I mean, pitching, catching, that's, infield work too. I think those are positions of depth. So, hey, we love Diego Cartaya, but you also have Dalton Rushing, Yainer Fernandez, Carson Taylor, Griffin Lockwood Powell, Tyrone Lorenzo. Hey, so, you got all these. It's a position of depth. So, you go get a CorbinBurnes, you give up a Gavin Stone, a Yorbit Vivas, a Diego Cartaya, and then whatever prospects that aren't on the 40-man beyond that. But I think you have to have at least 3 of them that are on the 40-man for the 1 pitcher that you're getting back. That way, you're putting 1 on, taking 3 off. That clears up 2 spots. You can then go get a Yamamoto. Then you can go get an Ohtani. All right, and now you've gotten your trade target and your 2 free agents. To me, that's the plan.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be at least one of the scenarios that they could pursue. Whether or not they bring in both Ohtani and Yamamoto, that remains to be seen, if they would be able to do that, or if that would even be the
They could financially. The room's there.
They certainly could financially, but they are also going to be battling with some other teams aggressively pursuing those guys. Two of the guys that a lot of teams are very, very aggressively pursuing. That's still going to be something that is a difficult challenge to overcome. Especially when you start speaking in the hundreds.
You think if the Dodgers really want Ohtani or Yamamoto, that they're going to have serious competition
for Ohtani and Yamamoto, especially?
I mean, I think if the Dodgers truly want them and they offer the cast that the two think that they want, and everything's equal, I think they're going to choose the Dodgers.
You would certainly think so. You also don't know the minds of both Ohtani and Yamamoto, and you also don't understand that other teams are desperate for star players, desperate for some of these really talented individuals to help take them over the top. I know we kind of have a perspective that the Dodgers, they desperately need them, which they do, and they have the financial resources. All I'm trying to say is other teams have the financial resources as well. Maybe not necessarily to the extent, might have a little bit more payroll flexibility in order to do that. But other teams are also desperate for some of these talents as well. Getting both of them would be something that would be difficult for the Dodgers to navigate because of a lot of the desperation of other teams as well as the Dodgers. So there's a lot of complications with all this. That's not trying to make an excuse for why the Dodgers wouldn't get both of those. It's an explanation of the complications that come with Major League Baseball free agency.
No doubt. Having said that, you see it with the Loons. I see it with Oklahoma City and Tulsa. if there's another organization that's better with international prospects than the Dodgers, I'd like to see it. I mean, if you're an international prospect, the Dodgers are a pretty damn good place to land.
Yeah, no, it is a very good place to land, and they take very good care of them and make sure that they get acclimated to American baseball, and they have some of the best scouts in order to find a lot of the great talent that exists within a lot of those countries. Yeah, they certainly do an amazing job and have a bunch of talented individuals from a lot of those countries.
Yeah, so Shohei Ohtani. So I think that's the path where you could go get a huge number one start, because the thing is, Ohtani's not going to pitch. You need two starters. We're talking about having two pitchers for next year. I think that's the way that you could do it. That's plan number one. The Dodgers always have fail-safe plan B, plan C, that kind of deal, right? Okay, they always have that. And so I think plan A is to go get in a trade and free up 40-man roster spots from a trade perspective, like I mentioned. Now, if none of that works out, and Ohtani and Yamamoto, Glasnow, Arozarena, his name's been brought up. If none of that works and you're stuck with a 40-man roster, and if none of the trade aspects work, and you've got a couple of free agents that you want to sign and you can't figure out a trade, plan B will be to DFA some guys on the roster, correct?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That unfortunately would be plan B, yes.
Yency Almonte is way down the line. Caleb Ferguson, I just can't imagine. I know people get frustrated with him because he gets put in high leverage situations. Got to remember, last year was his first year back. He had good moments. He had bad moments. There's no other way to put it. I don't see any possible scenario that Caleb Ferguson is DFA. Can you?
No, especially because he's a left-handed pitcher out of the bullpen. They don't necessarily have a ton of left-handed pitchers on the 40-man roster. I think he is somebody that wouldn't be towards the top of the line to get DFA'd. I think he's somebody that the Dodgers would envision on keeping.
I don't even think he would enter their mind. I don't even think he would even be a consideration for DFA. But that I could be. I mean, we don't know. We're just speculating.
Oh yeah, no,
JP Fireeisen.
I would say probably not, just because they've had some patience with him as he's been recovering from some of his injury. I think there's something that they like or want to see from him. If it wants to be something where they want to try to sneak him past a lot of the 40-man roster, they potentially could. I don't think that would necessarily work if they DFA'd him. I think another club would pick him up. I don't think he's at the top of the list, but that would be an option.
Nick Frasso, no. Gonsolin, no. Victor Gonzalez.
He'd be
down the list for me.
Yeah. Although, again, with him, he was arbitration eligible. He could have been somebody where Dodgers didn't decide to offer him a contract and try to re-sign him to a minor league free agent deal. They didn't decide to do that. So,
but there's no reason to do that. I mean, if you offer the contract, then you still have the two-way go if you're the Dodgers. Like right now, you still have the two-way go with these guys. You can either keep them on the 40-man and offer them a contract, or you can DFA them. Yep, if you don't offer them the contract in arbitration, then you only have the one-way go, and that is that you lose them, right?
Yep.
So that's why you do that, is because you keep yourself within a position of leverage as the club, and you give yourself a two-way go with all these guys, and if you need them, you keep them. If you don't, you DFA them, right? Which, if you DFA a guy at this point that you tendered a contract to as far as the arbitration goes, what's the difference between that and a DFA?
If you didn't offer them a contract through arbitration?
Correct.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about paying that individual player. So it'd be the talk of the difference between 0 and 1 million or so, or whatever Victor Gonzalez is going to make during the course of the season. Not a huge cost for the Dodgers. Certainly, they can bear that financial burden.
Yeah, but if you DFA him, isn't somebody going to pick up Victor Gonzalez?
It depends on what other teams need. There's certainly a world where a team might be looking for a left-handed reliever. I don't necessarily know if they would. I would say I honestly don't know if another team would do that.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, Bruce Dark Gratterall, no. Michael Grove, no. I think the number one target I'm getting ready to say, and I hope you understand, I love all these prospects. I saw this guy pitch 1,000,000 times. I think he's good. Okay, but there has to be somebody that you think would be the first guy that would get targeted, right? I mean, I don't mean this to throw anybody under the bus, to be negative, and it kills me to have this conversation, but it has to be had, right? I mean, it's business. It's business time of the year, right? Okay?
Yeah.
So I think the first guy that would be considered for DFA would be Brian Hudson.
I think you're unfortunately right with that. He's got a ton of talent too. You would hate to see that, but
6'8".
From where the Dodgers are at right now, just kind of eliminating a lot of the guys that we see, he certainly would probably be towards the front of the line in the Dodgers' mind if they had to make a move right now.
Yeah, and I've seen him pitch. He has good extension. He's left-handed. The Dodgers got to see him. The Dodgers fans got to see him a little bit. He's a little bit up on the up-down train. So I do think Brian Hudson would be candidate number one. Okay, so I think at max, hey, we were right on target when we said the Dodgers were going to protect probably 3 guys, right? And that's exactly what they protected. I said guaranteed 2, likely 3, and that's exactly what happened. And I think the likely 3 went down to the wire. So, I mean, and I'm so glad that it happened the way it did. Okay, so I'm saying if it comes to having to DFA somebody, I'm saying probably 1, maximum of 2. Would you agree with that?
I guess it depends on them being able to make some sort of trade happen.
Even if they don't, I don't think you're going to pick up more than 2 free agents. That would be good enough to justify DFAing somebody.
I think there could be envision a world where they potentially pick up maybe 3 free agents, talking about maybe perhaps an Ohtani and maybe 2 starting pitchers, not the high-end starting pitchers, but maybe one of them and maybe one of those, maybe 3 or 4. That is something that I could see
like a
the Dodgers potentially, like a LucasGiolito, or there's some rumors going around about a Seth Lugo. Some of those guys, I could envision the Dodgers taking that route.
2 of them?
Hoping to bank on some of the upside.
2 of them?
I could potentially see it. I mean,
you could see him taking an Ohtani plus 2 Giolito types?
I'm talking about an Ohtani plus perhaps they might go after one of the frontline starting pitchers. I'm talking about that, and potentially maybe like one of a tier or 2 below that.
But which free agent pitcher makes sense right now? I just don't see one that makes sense out there.
I mean, you're talking about for the front end, you're talking to like a Yamamoto or a Snell, that's true. And then once you move on from there,
that was a
then
stupid
you're looking
comment.
then you're looking at a Giolito, a Lugo, or an Imanaga or something like that. So I could see potentially,
you're right,
maybe 3 of these guys potentially, because they're already probably going to be looking for 2 starting pitchers, and then maybe an Ohtani type. Certainly a lot of rumors of that going around right now. So that is kind of what I could envision if they aren't able to make some sort of trade happen. And I think the most likely target as far as guys that could be removed from the 40-man roster, if those moves have to take place, unfortunately have to do with the bullpen, have to do with relief pitchers, because I think they see them as being fairly interchangeable and being guys that they can find hidden talent, like they did with a Ryan Brazier this past season. They can find
Chris Martin
guys and help fix them and help just find some sort of way to put them into the bullpen. I think that is the most likely scenario if they aren't able to make some sort of trade happen, though I think a trade is more than likely going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know, this is terrible of me, but every time I say the free agent thing, for some reason I keep forgetting Yamamoto. I don't know, it just always slips my mind. So let me back up and say you are 100% correct about that. That was a really dumb comment on my part as far as the free agent pitchers that don't make sense. Because, hey, Yamamoto, I've not seen him pitch with my own eyes. If the Dodgers scouting system, if they see him and they deem him worthy of the contract that he's going to get, got to go with the Dodgers scouting system. They know better than everybody. Okay, so Brian Hudson, I think he would be DFA candidate number 1. Kyle Hurt, absolutely no chance. Landon Knack, they just put him on the 40-man, no chance. Dustin May, no chance. Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, Evan Phillips, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Blake Trinan, no chance. Ricky Vanasco, no chance. They literally just signed him to a major league contract. Am I off here?
No, I don't believe you're off there.
I mean, if you want to DFA the guy, why did you go sign him to a major league contract, right?
Yeah, no, that one makes sense. I think they have some really good big plans for him, and I think they really liked what they saw from Ricky Vanasco.
Dodgers fans are going to like this guy as long as he performs like he's capable. Hey, he's been inconsistent in the past. He's been a starter. The strike zone's eluded him from time to time in his career, so nothing's a guarantee, correct? I mean, but from where he came from when he came over to the Dodgers and went to the complex, I believe it was like in May. From that point to when he got to Tulsa, then to when he got into that high leverage role. Hey, when he came to Oklahoma City, they were in the middle of trying to win. That was a big deal for Oklahoma City, whether people want to realize that or not. That was a nice run. It was a lot of fun. It was made into a big deal. The Dodgers do a great job of turning those. You see it with the Loons. The Dodgers do a great job of making winning important, right?
Yeah, no, winning is not some teams might say winning at the major league level is the only important thing. And what happens at the minor league level doesn't matter. And to a certain extent, they're right. Obviously, what happens at the big league level is the most important thing in where you want to win. But in order to do that, you have to cultivate a culture of winning. And that comes through the minor league system. You have to be in competition. You have to be striving to win. You have to learn that through the minor leagues as you are working on your craft. It's not just an individual sport, although that's mostly what it is about the development of the players. It's also about that development of learning how to win, which the Dodgers do a really good job in their system, cultivating that throughout all of the levels. I mean, you saw it with the Great Lakes Loons this past season in 2023, just how much winning meant to them and how much that race for the championship, their race for the Midwest League East division title, and then the one that just fell short of the Midwest League title meant to them. And it's the same thing with the rest of the system because of the culture that the Dodgers cultivate, which ultimately translates when those guys are ready to join the big league club. They know how to win because they did win in the minor leagues, and that's going to translate into the major leagues.
All right, here's some interesting ones. Gus Farland. The dude's good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, that is very tough because I really don't want to see that happen. Nor do I think that he deserves to
get picked up in a heartbeat, though. It wouldn't be terrible for Gus because he'd get picked up in a second by another club.
Yeah, no. So, unfortunately, I think he would enter the conversation because we're talking about the relief arms. And absolutely. Yeah, we're not saying this because we don't like them as individuals or like the player. We're saying that because we're looking at the reality of the Dodgers 40-man rosters and the business decisions and the likelihood of which positions that the Dodgers would likely look to if they need to find some breathing room because they have a bunch of guys in their system who could fill in with that. And if they needed to get guys as some sort of reclamation projects or find hidden gems, bullpen is usually
right-handed
one of those
bullpen
areas where you can, is one of those areas where the Dodgers have excelled at and can find a lot of those talents.
Alex Vesia, I think, is safe because I think the left-hander from the bullpen would be Brian Hudson or Victor Gonzalez. I think Vesia would be behind those two.
Yes. Yeah.
So Vesia or Gonzalez,
so,
which one would get DFA'd first?
I think it would be Victor Gonzalez.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, I want to reiterate, this show's killing me. I mean, I felt like it needed to be had because I think you need to talk about, this is the part of the season we're in. We're in the business decision part of this. Again, I want to reiterate, this does not mean that we think that these guys aren't major league quality. This doesn't mean that we don't think that they're awesome. This just means that, hey, there might be a situation to where the Dodgers have 44 players that they want, but they have to trim it down to 40. So which 4 go?
Yeah.
And we've got to give our opinion on which ones we think they'd be, right? So
I
hope if any of these players are watching this show, I certainly hope they don't think we're throwing them under the bus or any of that. We're just talking about business, right?
Yeah, no, we're talking about business, and we will be some of the first people to highlight a lot of the success
Absolutely.
that they would have in other organizations as well. If they get removed from the 40 man and go on to a different organization, we're more than happy to highlight and willing to help promote all of the good things that they're doing in them and other teams, because we like these guys as individuals as well. The difficult part of Major League Baseball is there is a business side, and there has to be those decisions, especially when the Dodgers have the necessity to upgrade their roster if they want to get over the hump. They've seen it with some of the roster that they have right now. It hasn't worked in the postseason. They need to make upgrades specifically at pitching, starting pitching specifically. So there are going to be moves that have to be made. These are some of the hard decisions that the Dodgers are going to have to talk about.
Landon Knox said it. Dodgers roster might be the toughest 40-man roster to crack of any roster in all of baseball for prospect. Not only because there's so many good players in the system, but also because they value veterans so much, right? So for a prospect type guy, you've got to be somebody they really think is going to help them for them to spend a 40-man. Because, again, 40-man roster spots are cash to the Dodgers. Cash itself really is kind of irrelevant because this organization has money. It's the roster spots that matter. Because, it's kind of like, like I always tell, I'm a history teacher, and I always tell kids, hey, no matter how much money you have, right? There's two things that you can't create more of. No matter how much money you make, you can't create more land, and you can't create more time, right? So if you ever come into a situation where you own land or where you can save time and spend time the way you want it, do it, please, right? So, the Dodgers can always make more money, but the rules are rules. They can't put 44 guys on the roster, right? So having said that, this is one of the toughest rosters to crack. So I say that to say the reason why I'm upbeat about this conversation, because I don't think there's a single person on the Dodgers 40-man roster that any other – hey, if the guy's good enough to make the Dodgers 40-man roster, then damn it, he's good enough to make the Pirates 40-man roster, right? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at this. So these guys are going to get picked up if they get DFA'd, in my opinion. So that's the positive side of this.
Yeah, no, I think you pointed it out right there. You're absolutely right with that. This is one of, if not the most difficult 40-man rosters to crack, and it's an incredibly difficult roster to crack. And all of these guys that are on the 40-man roster are there for a reason. It's because they are incredibly talented individuals, and all of these decisions that the Dodgers might have to make are so incredibly difficult. And so, but it is something that they, as an organization, are going to have to make this call.
All right, I'm going to pull myself up by the bootstraps and quit being a wimp, and we're going to talk business, right, Austin? All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Ryan Yarbrough.
I would say
on the list, but not very high.
I would say it depends on what they do for starting pitching. So with him, he's one of those guys who can kind of float between a starter with that middle relief piggyback type role. If they are able and are comfortable with getting two starters, I think that lessens the role like a guy like a Ryan Yarbrough could have. In that scenario, you could potentially envision Ryan Yarbrough, if necessary, not being utilized, especially if they want to utilize some of the younger guys who can fit some more of that piggyback type role. Some of it turns into a situation where Ryan Yarbrough might not be necessary. Right now, as the roster is constructed today, he is necessary. But if they add a couple of arms, will he be, especially if they don't decide to trade a lot of guys? That's a scenario where it would be better for Ryan Yarbrough to get opportunities with another organization.
So you're saying his value is being a left-handed swingman, that the Dodgers don't have another guy in that's like that in the system right now.
And you're right about that. They could see, hey, it's good to have a left-handed swingman. What I was talking about more was the innings that he provides, especially as a starter or as a bulk inning guy. They have a lot of those guys, and so
but they're all right-handed.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Do you want to keep the right-handed guys who are younger and probably have more? They definitely have more upside than a guy like a Ryan Yarbrough who's later into his career, or do you just want to have that lefty there? Those are the conversations that could come up with a guy like Ryan Yarbrough.
Yeah, not could. I
Yeah,
promise
yeah.
you. Every single one of these players. Hey, the Dodgers, they come over every inch of every single player to make sure that they are not. Hey, if there's not going to be a stone that's not turned over for every one of their own guys, which is why I always say trades always work for the Dodgers because they know their guys way better than the other teams know their guys. So when they trade guys off, they know the guys are trading off way better than the other teams that are getting them. Okay, so Ryan Yarbrough, I think he's on the list. He's way down the list. Okay, so let me ask you this. Yarbrough, Gonzalez, which one between those two?
I would say Gonzalez probably, just because Yarbrough would provide a little bit of length that
Versatility.
a little bit of versatility with that, and he's a left-hander, although that becomes incredibly difficult, and I haven't done as much research as the Dodgers have to make that call, so that is just first instinct.
I wouldn't want to have to make those calls. Those calls are tough.
Oh no.
That's why, again, if you just go out and you figure out the trade market and you go say 3 for 1 or 1 for 3 in the Dodgers case, which means that you're gonna send away 3 players, get 1 in return. You don't have to worry about these decisions. See all these tough conversations we're having? You don't have to have those if you go that route. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, you just have to have the tough conversations of who you decide to trade away.
Correct.
In that case. That's where the tough conversations translate to. It's a different conversation.
It's an easier conversation for me, substantially, because you trade away people and players in positions of depth that are blocked.
Yeah.
Guys that are great players that are never going to see the field for the Dodgers because there's just too many guys in front of them. Right?
Yeah, no, I think you're certain.
Or guys that you have positional
right
depth
about that. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, at the certain positions, there are, like you said about it, there's very limited opportunities within this organization because of the high bar of excellence that the Dodgers demand at the major league roster. Makes it incredibly difficult to crack. Not saying that these prospects don't meet that level of success, but the Dodgers, because of that high expectations, they like to get a lot of guys that they know can clear that bar. And with that, because they develop a lot of guys in their system, they have so much depth within their system, it becomes easier to trade off some of those guys because they can get guys who excel that bar, meet that level of excellence, while also being able to supplement with the farm system when they need it because of the scouting that they have, because of the players that they have in their system. Makes it a little bit easier, not completely easy, because you hate as an organization to see these talents go and see the depth go. But I think that it certainly is a move that the Dodgers likely are going to have to make, because they also have to take into account opportunity in order for these guys to continue to develop as well. Opportunity costs that come from some of the signings, like keeping these guys with arbitration or like signing a Jason Hayward. It's not just about the financial cost or the 40-man roster cost. It is also about the opportunity cost at the major league level, which is an important thing to keep in mind. And one of the main reasons why the Dodgers are likely to trade some of the guys on the 40-man roster who are prospects to other teams, not just to get the level of talent, but because there is very little opportunity for them at the big league level in order to develop and grow into the Major League Baseball players that we know that they can be.
Let me give you a perfect case scenario of what you're talking about, or what we're talking about. Let's say the Dodgers go get RandyArozarena, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So that tells you that they're probably planning on putting Mookie Betts at second base, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's your plan there. Okay, and then probably Johnny DeLuca and James Outman, RandyArozarena, that's your outfield, something like that. Jason Hayward is your fourth outfielder, or DeLuca is your fourth outfielder, whichever way you want to go. Hayward being the left-handed hitter, DeLuca being pretty good scenario to have, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so at that point, Yorbit Vivas gets traded. He's in that trade. Now, nobody in the Dodgers system wants to see Yorbit Vivas go. We love the type of game he has. He's a great player. He has some versatility to him. He has great plate discipline. We've talked about it time in and time out. He walks more than he strikes out, that kind of thing. We love Yorbit Vivas. Everybody in the Dodgers system loves Yorbit Vivas. But at that point, if RandyArozarena is your right fielder and Mookie Betts is your second baseman, right? I mean,
yeah, you make that move. Obviously, a trade for RandyArozarena just won't just include a guy like Yorbit Vivas, but that would meet the level of excellence that the Dodgers demand and would create just a higher ceiling for the Dodgers to attain. You're getting a guy that has been an incredible outfielder, somebody who been doing this for a while now, still has several years of club control, and has been really good in the bright moments during the postseason. He has had some huge moments. That is a player that if you decide to go out and get, that would just raise the bar and also create more opportunities to win during the primes of Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. In that scenario, you would be willing to sacrifice some of the talent that you have on the 40-man roster because you would be getting a guy that is incredibly talented. And then you also trust your farm system to be able to supplement those guys. While you have RandyArozarena for 3 years, even if he doesn't re-sign with the Dodgers, you'd be able to develop a guy to help fill in that shoes when he moves on from the system. So that type of talent, that also goes for some of the starting pitchers as well. You can be able to supplement those guys if the guy that you bring back can meet the level of excellence that the Dodgers expect.
Great way to put it. That's kind of what I'm saying. The Dodgers don't want to get rid of any of these guys. But if at some point you're going to get a guy that's making – so you take the guys then at that point that are blocked, right, and that you have organization, that's who you try to trade away, right? I mean, so like if you go get a guy that's going to put Mookie Betts at second base, that makes all your second basemen tradable at that point, right? Okay, so if you go get, you know, a number one starter, then that makes some of your pitching a little bit more tradable, right? That kind of deal. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying at that point.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, you don't just go give away a guy that you actually need. You try to give away a guy that has value. You know, he's going to be a really great major leaguer. We all think that, but yet isn't going to do it with the Dodgers the next 2 or 3 years because the Dodgers already have established, you know, MVP type players at that position. You know, so
yeah,
that's kind of the strategy there. Austin Barnes, no. Diego Cartaya, no. Hunter Fiducia, no. Will Smith, no. Michael Busch, no. Freddie Freeman, Gavin Lux, Max Muncy. We talked about Rojas, no. Chris Taylor. Miguel Vargas, no. Yorbit Vivas, no. Mookie Betts. DeLuca, no. Outman, Pages, no.
No, there's really nobody on the position player wise. I know a lot of people might bring up like an Austin Barnes. The issue with that is you need to have depth at the catching position, especially at the catching position, because it is such a taxing position. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why the Dodgers decided to add Hunter Fiducia to the 40-man roster, is to add a third catcher that is ready for the major leagues. So then in case there's some sort of injury, you're not calling somebody up who has only catched at the AA level, hasn't caught at AA. Speaking of Diego Cartaya or a Carson Taylor, up to the big leagues and expecting them to be at that level of excellence for the Dodgers. I know Austin Barnes has not been to that level that the Dodgers expect. He is still under contract. He's still loved by a lot of his teammates, and certainly can provide hopefully some value behind the plate a little bit, or at least provide the Dodgers with at least a little bit of depth. Unless they decide to bring in an additional catcher, which would basically not add any player to the 40-man roster. They would just switch spots with a Austin Barnes. That doesn't solve the solution that you have right now of figuring out which guys if you need to clear room, would be designated for assignment, unfortunately, to clear that room.
Bottom line is Hunter Fiducia is better than Diego Cartaya right now, period. He's better than every other catcher you have in the system right now.
Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't mean 3 years from now that's the case, but as of right now, Hunter Fiducia, in my opinion, is the second best catcher in the system.
Yes. Yeah, I think you are right with that. Will the Dodgers bring him up to the big leagues? There's still spring training to fight over that, to decide that, to figure that out. We'll have to see what happens with that.
Okay, let's get to some comments. That's been a good conversation. That I struggled, if you can't tell, with that, Austin.
Oh, yeah. No,
when you're talking about cutting guys, man, that one gets tough for me.
Yeah, no, this is the unfortunate part of the business, and not something that we like talking about a whole lot.
I hope we did okay with that, by the way. Okay. Yeah. Hey, wanted to remind everybody the GoFundMe account, the link to that is up the top. If you could donate $1.50, whatever, or not, no big deal either way, but we are trying to start a spring training fund account, trying to send Austin to spring training here, and that would be awesome, So I wrote an awesome story today, too. I got that link in here, right here, as you can see on the chat. I've got that link, and that is to his story. We're going to get into that conversation here in a minute if we can get to the comments about FIP and XFIP, about, hey, how teams they're not looking at past performances as much. They're trying to predict future performances, and Austin is all over this type of metrics and stats that they use to do that with. That story tells all about that, so go check that out. Got that link right there in the chat. Good evening, Roy. Thank you for tuning in. Craig, good evening as well. Roy says, are the Braves the front runner for Cease because he is from Georgia? Do the Dodgers still have interest? Absolutely, the Dodgers still have interest. No doubt about it.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's going to be not DylanCease's decision whether he goes to the Dodgers. It's going to be the White Sox decision as far as which package they would like to receive in a trade scenario. He's still under club control. He's not a free agent, so the White Sox are going to make that decision depending on which package that they would like if they decide to trade a DylanCease.
Roy Estrada says, Craig Reeves still bothers me. Not playing like a key piece. Would trade him while he still has value. Hep C says, Brian Hudson, Victor Gonzalez are gone. We'll see. I mean, that's if they, again, I think they're going to try to trade away some pieces to keep everybody they have already on the 40-man. Those are two left-handed. Victor Gonzalez is a left-hander that can hit 98 that had major league success last year, and quite a bit of it towards the end of last year. Brian Hudson, again, 6'8", lots of extension, has the good sweeping slider, so there's a lot to like there. So I don't think I don't think plan A is to get rid of those two. I think those probably would be the first two that would be gone if they have to DFA somebody, but again, we'll see what happens in the trade market. Can't till January, says Craig. Okay, I don't like the Hayward signing. He doesn't hit in the playoffs, and he has to be platooned. I'm conflicted about guys like Jason Hayward. And again, these are tough conversations for me because, I'm on the player side, right? I will not ever badmouth a player or I know how hard this game is. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've just seen how hard this game. It's just too hard. And these guys care and they love the game and they love to, they want to do good as well as anybody. So again, we're talking business, correct? We're not talking about, whether we like players or not. So I get conflicted on players like Jason Hayward. I personally don't think he's dynamic enough. I think the Dodgers could go out and get a more dynamic type player. I think Johnny DeLuca will be a more dynamic player. I think Johnny DeLuca, with the same amount of bats, would hit more than 15 home runs. I think you would have probably a little bit higher batting average. And then I also think you'd have 25 stolen bases, where Jason Hayward only had like 7. And I think DeLuca would be probably better in the outfield. But again, then you have a veteran presence in the clubhouse. Freddie likes. So I see why the Dodgers would want a guy like that, and they like the sure things that they have seen perform at the major league level. A guy like Johnny DeLuca, we've seen him some at the major leagues. Certainly not a sure thing. So I can understand it both ways. And so where do you fall on that, Austin?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of those kind of conflicting thoughts kind of crept up in my mind too with that. With Jason Hayward, first off, I want to say that Jason Hayward, for what he did last season, especially looking at his career trajectory, his career was on the brink of being at an end after his run with Chicago. And the Dodgers were able to take him in. They were able to fix something in his swing. And he really did perform, really outperformed a lot of the expectations that people had of him when the Dodgers decided to give him that minor league contract last season. And he was incredibly valuable. You look at F-WAR, Fangraphs WAR, he was worth 2.2 WAR last season. You're talking about a guy that was valuable for his team. Yeah, no, he was a valuable player last season. Talk about 15 home runs. You're talking about 9% walk percentage, 17% strikeout percentage, and a guy who, because of the position that the Dodgers put him in, platooning almost exclusively against right-handed pitchers, that is a scenario, and he's put in an environment where he can succeed. Now, the issue that comes up with signing a guy like a Jason Hayward is those opportunity costs that come with that signing for some of the younger guys that you might need in the future to help supplement your roster, especially if the Dodgers are looking to sign a Shohei Ohtani and maybe a Yoshinobu Yamamoto. You're talking about big contracts added to this roster. You're going to have to supplement that with guys either from the farm system who are going to be receiving some of that MLB minimum salary, or with guys that are reclamation type projects that are cheap. With a guy like a Jason Hayward, he's a guy that I believe next season, if he continues with the trend that he had with the Dodgers, could be a valuable piece and could be very well worth the contract that he has. And with that, I don't think there's any doubt that
was it $9 million?
He would certainly. It is $9 million, yeah, and you're talking about $8.5 million per one WAR. That's what could be a very reasonable contract. The issue with that could be the opportunity cost that it could have for a guy like a Johnny DeLuca, for guys like a Michael Busch or Miguel Vargas. But then again, maybe the Dodgers are already envisioning packaging them in some type of trade to get a starting pitcher. So maybe that opportunity cost is not as large as we make it out to be right now. If we see the grand vision of what the Dodgers are planning to do this offseason, with signing a guy like Jason Hayward, I think he's going to be fine with what he does. In fact, last year he did succeed with what he did. So with that, I'm kind of a little bit conflicted, but I understand the move. And I think they were going to make a move for an outfielder regardless. The answer to that seems to be Jason Hayward.
So here's the bottom line. You like numbers, you like statistics, right, Austin? You taught a statistics
a little bit,
class. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah,
so bottom line, no matter how you put it, he had 334 at bats last year, right? So the opportunity cost is 334 at bats are taken away from anybody else in your system, right? Is Jason Hayward and what he's going to bring your club worth taking away 334 at bats from Johnny DeLuca, Miguel Vargas, Michael Busch, Yorbit Vivas, or whoever it is else that you go and get? Is his 334 at bats taking away from those guys? Is he worth that? It's not the $9 million. Is he worth?
Yes.
Is he worth those 334 at bats?
Yeah, no, in the 1 year, the $9 million doesn't really impact the Dodgers at all. It is that question about opportunity cost. Right now, if the Dodgers roster is as constructed as it is today, that is a big impact on that opportunity cost for those guys. But tomorrow, if there is some sort of trade, or in the future, if there is some sort of trade, that opportunity cost diminishes a little bit because there might be less guys just looking at the 40-man roster who might need those opportunities. So right now, looking at it, the opportunity cost seems high because it seems to be taken away from a lot of guys. Some of those guys might be getting opportunities in other organizations because the Dodgers have other shoes or other holes to help fill in order to help construct the best roster they possibly can to make a run for the World Series.
I agree with everything you said. I'm just telling you, though, if the Dodgers trade Johnny DeLuca in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to be pissed because that dude's good.
Oh, that dude is incredibly
not bad-mouthing Jason
talented.
Hayward. But if the Dodgers trade Johnny DeLuca, to give Jason Hayward 336 at bats. I'm going to be pissed. I will say that point blank.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong about it. We've talked a lot about just how good Johnny DeLuca is. Yeah, no, I mean, Dodgers just got a small taste of what he's able to deliver. If you get that over the course of not 45 plate appearances, but over the course of 300, 400, 500 plate appearances, you'll start to appreciate just the skills that Johnny DeLuca has with both the power, the speed, the ability to control the strike zone a little bit. And then, like the Dodgers saw in Texas, the dynamic defense that he brings in the outfield. So, yeah, it is a very difficult cost to have taken away opportunities for a lot of these guys, because these guys could succeed. With the Dodgers, again, that bar of excellence that they expect within their organization, it's a lot of times easier to take what you envision as the safe bet, the guy who has been at the big leagues for a longer period of time, who knows what it takes to get to that bar of excellence. I believe in a guy like a Johnny DeLuca, who, if given the opportunity, could meet that bar. With the Dodgers, they seem at times to like it, to play it safe a little bit. Could be what they're doing with Jason Hayward. Also could be envisioning some potential trades coming up to where, man, you might need those 300 or so at bats that he's going to have. And you want Jason Hayward to, because he had success against right-handed pitchers last season, to take those at bats.
Yep. I understand. It's a great conversation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a very fun conversation.
We've got Johnny DeLuca up on the screen right now. I don't have it up for you. You want me to put it up for you, Austin?
No, you're fine.
Okay, yeah. So let's get back to some more comments as we watch Johnny DeLuca here. Lakers are destroying the Pistons. That's good. Okay. Dodgers don't need those lefties from relievers from last year. I would say Victor Gonzalez was better than people give him credit for. Caleb Ferguson. Yeah, I mean, again, first year back. And then Alex Vesia. Again, I struggle to ever say anything negative about any player. Again, I'm going to say that again. Okay, but he's probably the one I trust the least, just because I just don't trust his emotions. Does it make sense? He's just so up and down. And even in the AAA performances I saw him in Oklahoma City, it's like, dude, just breathe. You're about to hyperventilate, man. It's just those kind of emotions I don't trust, because they roller coaster, if that makes sense. But that's just me. I could be wrong on that. Okay, Ferguson and Vesia need to go. Dodgers don't need those. Okay, you need to learn to like the Hayward trade, because he is a Dodger in 2024. He brings more to the club than just play. Yeah, we talked about the leadership in the clubhouse. And James Outman, who I think we could agree that Hayward probably took some at-bats away from Outman last year. Okay, James Outman would be the first one to tell you that Jason Hayward was a big mentor to him. And Craig says, yes, agree, Roy. 1-year deal is a bad one. Even Syndergaard, as bad as he was, it was just a 1-year deal. I like the 1-year deals for the reclamation projects.
Oh, yeah. No, there's very rarely a bad 1-year deal, because you just have to deal with it that 1 year. If it doesn't work out, you can move on without the huge financial burden that brings. So 1-year deals, you almost never see a bad 1-year deal, even if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to some more. I actually didn't have Johnny DeLuca up. I thought we'll get to it here later. Okay, Roy says, see you later, facts. Random Hero, 100% no way Rojas gets DFA'd. Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. I would agree with that. Michael Carrillo, Barnes is a prime DFA candidate. I think from a performance perspective, I think that is 100% correct. I do not think the Dodgers will evaluate that on performance, though. I think if they were going to get rid of him, it would have been already or the end of last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right with that. And because they also need depth at that position, that can't be emphasized enough. If they bring somebody else from outside of the organization in, that becomes a real conversation. As it is right now, you need depth at that position. You can't just have two guys that are ready to go at the big league level. You need more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong necessarily by saying that, Michael, but I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen for the Dodgers. Craig says hi to Michael. Yeah. All right, put Barnes in a trade. Yeah, that would be great, Craig, but I don't think he brings a whole lot of value back in a trade. Would you think, Austin?
For Barnes,
Yeah.
I don't believe so. No, a lot of these guys that, yeah, especially with a guy like a Barnes who didn't perform a lot last season, I don't envision his trade value being necessarily very high, just because a lot of teams would be concerned about the performance that he would bring for their team as well. It's not like you can just assume that other teams value these guys. They also have to think about their own selves, and what these guys would do in their own organizations as well. That becomes incredibly difficult. So I don't envision a trade for an Austin Barnes. Either they keep him or they decide to release him, would be the case that he is facing right now.
Yeah, we have a comment here. I'll get to it here in just a second. Let me get back to my screen here. We have a comment that Victor Gonzalez would be, there's always teams that need. Let me get back to my program here, and I'll switch this over. There's Victor Gonzalez right there. Okay. So we have a comment that says teams are always needing cheap lefties, especially ones that can hit 96, 97 and that have had major league success, like Victor Gonzalez. That's what I mentioned earlier. I think if he gets DFA'd, he immediately gets picked up. Would he have any value in a trade?
I think that you could potentially see, I wouldn't say it's very much value in a trade, just because they can potentially find some of these other lefties elsewhere. Coming up, since winter meetings are going to be happening pretty soon, is going to be the Rule 5 draft, in which case you could potentially get some guys from the Rule 5 draft, some left-handed relievers that are up in some of the systems of some organizations. Talked about some of the guys that are available in the past, like a Rooney, like a Gamboa. But there are opportunities to get a lot of relief pitchers, which I think a lot of organizations see that for relief pitchers. I don't think it's just the Dodgers who view relief pitchers as things that you can acquire relatively easily in comparison to some of the other positions. Lefties is where it gets a little bit unique and challenging, because they're a lot more rare than some of those right-handed relief pitchers. So with Victor Gonzalez, he certainly, I wouldn't envision being any sort of centerpiece to some sort of trade. He could be somebody that could be enticing to a team just to kind of add on to that trade if they are looking to have some sort of left-handed relief pitching help, especially a guy left-handed with some velocity with it as well. So it's difficult to gauge a lot of these players' trade values, especially with some of the relief pitchers as well. With Victor Gonzalez, I can't imagine that it's too terribly high as far as the trade value, but he certainly is a very valuable player, and certainly that if the Dodgers decide to move on from him, if they have to do that, I believe he would get other opportunities in other organizations.
What is the hang up with him? I'm just curious. If you look the way he started in April, he didn't give up any runs. He didn't give up a run this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He did not give up a run in his first 10 outings. That would be 1, 2, 2.2, 3.2, 4.2, 5.2, 6.1, 7.2. 9.2. That would be in 11 innings. His first 11 innings, he didn't give up a run. Then his last 10 innings of this year, last 10 innings of the regular season, he only gave up one. And then in the postseason, okay, he pitched 6.2 innings. He had 5 strikeouts. Or career postseason, I should say, career postseason. He has a 2.7 ERA. I'm curious where it's coming, the Victor Gonzalez, where that's coming from, kind of.
Yeah, I don't fully grasp it necessarily. With him, you're talking about bullpen arms, which are so incredibly volatile that it's easy to throw them necessarily under the bus if you need somebody. If you need space on your 40-man roster. I think that's the reason why he's coming up. But if you look at his season last season at the big leagues, pitched in 33.6 3.2 innings. You look at some of the numbers that we will get to talk about later in the show, like a FIP and xFIP. You're talking about it in the mid threes, like 3.4 for FIP, 3.76 for his expected FIP. For his expected ERA is 3.18, which takes into account a little bit more of the exit velocities and stuff. You're talking about a guy who did have success at the big leagues. But I think with bullpens, I think it is very easy to remember some of the performances that didn't go well rather than the many performances that did go well. So I think regardless whether you're talking about like a Victor Gonzalez or if you're talking about a guy like a Brusdar Graterol or any of these guys, you remember a lot of those moments where things did not go well in one inning, perhaps cost the game a little bit. So I think with a guy like a Victor Gonzalez, I think a couple of factors go into why or at least some Dodgers fans envision him as being an option. One, because of the volatility of the relief market. Two, because he has been up and down from the minor leagues to the big leagues the past couple of seasons. And because of perhaps some of the disappointing outings that relief pitchers have, that could stick out in the minds of a lot of players as well, or people trying to evaluate what to do. It's incredibly.
This is Brian Hudson on your screen, by the way, guys.
Yeah, it's incredibly tough to figure out how to navigate or have these conversations with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm going to get some Gus Varland video going here. This is Brian Hudson that you've been seeing here for the last couple of minutes. Again, we're talking about possible DFA candidates if the Dodgers eventually need to clear space. You just saw Victor Gonzalez. Here's Brian Hudson. And again, these are not guys that we want the Dodgers to get rid of. These are, we're just talking business decisions here. So, you never know what's going to happen. But this is Gus Varland here. This would be another guy that he would get picked up almost immediately. And again, we're just talking about the business decisions side of things for the Dodgers. But okay, so let's get back to some more comments. Did you guys see that a Cease trade might happen soon? So, okay, Arozarena played all his games in left field. Yeah, when I saw him when he came through Oklahoma City, he played all his games in right field. So it would be interesting to see whether the Dodgers put him in left field and then kept Mookie in right and then figured out who their second baseman was. Again, this is Gus Varland pitching here. Or if they put him in right field, moved Mookie to second base, put DeLuca in left, and made Jason Hayward your fourth outfielder. I think there's two different ways you could go with that. It would be interesting to see. It's going to depend on whether they prioritize at bats for Michael Busch and Miguel Vargas over DeLuca. But again, there's that opportunity cost. It's going to be interesting to see if that happened, which way that would go. Okay, did you guys see that a Cease trade might happen soon? Braves and Dodgers are the front runners. Are there any other prospects that you think we need to be looking at right now, as far as the conversation we're having today?
I mean, you're talking about with a trade for a DylanCease, you're talking about looking at some of the guys on the 40-man roster, both positional player-wise and pitching-wise, who don't necessarily have clear roles with the Dodgers in 2024 as of this moment. So you're talking about some of the guys on the 40-man, and all of these guys, it'd be very difficult to see them go, but exciting to see them get new opportunities. But you're talking about potentially like a Diego Cartaya, like the Busch Vargas being in that conversation, like a Pages.
They would be in a trade. They wouldn't be at DFA.
Yeah, all of these guys would be in trade candidates for like a DylanCease. Or you're looking at the pitching side. You're looking at names like Sheehan or Stone, or you're talking about those types of names on the 40-man for trade scenarios. Yes, there have been reports that trade talks have been intensifying for a guy like a DylanCease. He certainly is one of those guys that the Dodgers, because of the upside that they've seen from him in the past, not necessarily looking exclusively at his performance last season, but because what he did, I believe in 2022, second in the voting for Cy Young, showed some explosiveness during that season. They might believe that if they surround him with some of the best coaches as far as pitching wise and some of the just giving him a little bit out of Chicago in different opportunities that he might be able to flourish. You could envision potentially the Dodgers making that move, especially because they have to make a move for a frontline starting pitcher.
Yeah, no doubt. You're seeing Gavin Stone here talking to Alex Friedman. He mentioned right before the All-Star break, Gavin Stone was working after he didn't have the success at the major league level, came back, worked with all the Dodgers pitching coaches, and made a whole bunch of adjustments. Mainly it was trying to get his fastball to spots in the zone that weren't going to get ambushed, and then being able to be consistently getting that in the zone, and then parts of the zone not only that it didn't get ambushed, but then he could also play all other stuff off of. Added the cutter like Michael Grove did, and that's been really a game changer for him. So I wanted to show you Gavin Stone here. That he's a guy that the Dodgers would I promise you, they would hate to get rid of because they feel like he turned a corner last year and really made a lot of progress for the organization. So, hey, heard a rumor. This is from Ela Shiva. Good evening, Ela Shiva. Heard a rumor that regarding Jock Peterson and the Dodgers. Do you favor this? I am 100%, absolutely, totally, unequivocally, entirely against that. Austin?
Yeah, I don't envision a scenario where that is likely unless the Dodgers decide to pivot and decide not to sign a guy like a Shohei Ohtani, and they want to add some sort of left-handed DH type bat. But then you also, if you don't sign a Shohei Ohtani, perhaps that presents an opportunity to move like a Max Muncy to that designated position role. So I see that as very unlikely, or at least if I was in the position where the Dodgers are right now, I wouldn't necessarily make that move. I think for that, you would rather provide opportunities for a lot of the younger guys to be able to grow and have controllable years with a Jock Peterson, whether you sign him to a 1 year or I don't believe I would necessarily give him a multi-year deal, although you could certainly envision that happening. What that is doing, just like what Jason Hayward does to a certain degree, degrade some of the opportunity cost for some of the younger guys to grow and be able to adapt to the major league level. So I would envision that as unlikely, at least if I was in charge of the Dodgers organization.
Yeah,
now,
no
obviously,
doubt
the
about it.
Dodgers are going to make their own moves and decide to do what is best for their organization. And we've seen them kind of go back to some players that they are familiar with. And so in that case, that certainly could be a scenario if they want to bring back the band per se, or bring back some of the guys that they are accustomed to that know how to play in LA. If I were the Dodgers, though, that's not the route that I would take.
Yeah, me too. I would agree with that. That's a great comment, though, and these are great conversations to have. Matt Kramer, who always just wonderful thoughts. Again, I'm going to say it. First time I've said it tonight. I should have said it a long time ago, Austin. We don't have the biggest crowd at Dodgers Daily, right? Although, hey, it's growing. No doubt the live crowd is growing, right? Okay, and we certainly appreciate that. That is so wonderful. The bigger the crowd, the funner. Hey, you never can tell which direction we're going to go, right? And hopefully Austin and I know enough about it where we can go different directions and not sound like dumbasses, right, on this thing. That's the whole goal for both of us. So it's super fun, but I'm going to say it. Dodgers Daily, it doesn't have the biggest crowd, but it does have absolutely the best baseball crowd out there.
Yes, you're absolutely right with that. Just love the audience and love the communication that we're able to have with the audience and love all the comments that you guys provide with this. It really is a smart baseball community with a whole bunch of different opinions, but you guys come up from it from just such a unique perspective and with intention behind it too, which I think makes this community, Dodgers Daily, so unique and so amazing.
Okay, I'm going to try to. I just messed you up right there, Austin. I got you right there, and I'm going to try to get this to scoot over so we can actually read this article at the same time. So bear with me here just for a second until I can actually get this centered on the screen where I can move this over and we can go over this together with Austin, the young man who wrote this wonderful article. Okay, right here. Let's see. Hold on. No, I need a screen capture. Well, okay.
Yeah, even if you're not able to pull it up, I can kind of give a little bit of a synopsis of what everything is with that article that I wrote, which we have an amazing audience right here. This is kind of the the side of our show where we're going to get a little bit nerdy with some of the baseball statistics, but I think it is important
There you
to
go.
do
We
this
got it
because
pulled
it
up
is,
now.
yeah, this is incredibly important to do because it is important to understand what we are talking about when we are talking about a lot of these baseball statistics. I know a lot of people kind of throw out some statistics, but don't necessarily understand what they are and their purpose, which was the goal of this. And it also is a little bit innovative as well as far as thinking about it, and brings a little bit from some of my background as well. So I don't know if we want to necessarily read through the art. It is a fairly lengthy article. Necessarily read for that, or you want me to give a little bit of synopsis, whatever you think would be best.
Fielding independent pitches. Okay, so first of all, teams in the hot stove stage of the offseason, instead of trying to figure out what guys did in the past, they try to use metrics and data analysis to figure out what they're going to do in the future, correct?
Yes. Yeah. The goal in this free agency is to not pick the players who succeeded the most in 2023. It is who will succeed the most in 2024 and beyond. That is the most important thing that teams are keeping in mind when they're going to deciding which players to add in the future. So this kind of gives a little bit of a breakdown of some of the metrics, not all of the metrics. These are using some of the countable statistics of the season. There certainly is a lot of elements to it, but these are some of the a little bit more advanced statistics that have gotten a little bit more accustomed or have gained more credibility recently. One of those is fielding independent pitching.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm kind of in between. It's kind of cool because I didn't grow up with any of these stats. I grew up with batting average, and I didn't even grow up like with WHIP or OPS. It was just batting average and on base percentage, right? Okay, so all these are pretty new to me, but yet a lot of them make sense. Like fielding it, trying to figure out, hey, yeah, if a guy, try to make everything standard for all the pitchers and not one pitcher's better because he has a better defense behind him. So here is the fielding independent pitching. So Austin, go ahead and explain exactly what this is and why it works.
Yeah, so it comes down from a basic flaw that earned run average has, which you mentioned. With ERA, there is a potential flaw in it to where pitchers don't always control the batted balls that get put in play behind them. They don't control the positioning of the defense. They also don't even control necessarily where the ball is going to land when it gets put in play. So there is some luck involved when it comes to ERA. So with that, FIP, fielding independent pitching, was created to only include the statistics that a pitcher can control. So it only includes strikeouts, walks, hit by pitches, and home runs, and creates an ERA-like estimate, meaning on the same scale of ERA, so you can understand it the exact same way, except with only the controllable aspects of the pitcher. So you have their strikeout rate, their walk rate, how often they gave up home runs, and also hit by pitches are kind of thrown in there as well, because that's something that pitchers can control. So basically what FIP does, takes everything a pitcher can control, converts it into an ERA-like estimator. That is fielding independent pitching.
Yep, and so that kind of gives you an idea of what a pitcher, all the different pitchers in the league would do, if there were no elements that they couldn't control, out there, or if they're all exactly the same, right? So who's the best pitcher under the exact same scenario as everybody else, right? Can you hear me?
You're exactly right with that. You're talking about some of the guys where if you just take a look at what they can control, who did that best. Now that can be taken into the next step, which the other statistic that gets highlighted is called XFIP, or expected fielded independent pitching. That only makes one small tweak, and it comes from the assumption that pitchers don't always control how often fly balls get hit for home runs.
Right.
How often have we seen like a home run barely scrape by the wall? Or let's take an example that's close to home for me, living in Michigan area, Comerica Park. very vast as far as his outfield walls. There could be batted ball. There could be fewer home runs hit in that ballpark than there is, say, in Yankee Stadium. And so there could be perhaps some luck involved, even with the home run rate that the pitcher can control. And so what expected FIP does, and this is the key part, or one of the key parts in my article with here, is it converts that home run rate to the league average home run rate, meaning you're going from one extreme to what the pitcher can control, to what the pitcher had from home runs, to the league average. And it does this for every single pitcher when calculated expected FIP.
That is awesome. Because I think with everything that happened, I think there also needs to be projections as to what normally would have happened, under normal circumstances. Because a guy might have got lucky, or he might have, hey, a ball might have went an inch to the left and it was a home run, where if it's an inch to a right, it wouldn't have been. There's all sorts of inching factors like that I think you need to have both real numbers. And I totally agree with you, Elis Shiva. I love batting average. Hey, Austin, you know this as well as I do. I argue with you all the time about the fact that almost every offensive statistic, even the new modern ones, batting average plays a factor in all of them, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there certainly is an element that batting average does play, and you certainly do want to get on base. You want to put some balls in play. Yeah, that certainly does play a role. Absolutely.
So, this isn't to say that ERA is not important. This isn't to say that, all the normal, the typical pitcher stats that we've seen over the years aren't important. This is just to say these are added elements to go and show not only what is ERA shows what somebody's already done. So now, is there a way that we can actually make a projection to see if they're going to keep being like that? Are they going to get better? Are they going to get worse? Are they going to stay the same? That I think,
or whether they got necessarily lucky or unlucky with some of the things that they have. But it's important because a lot of times people might throw out what FIP and xFIP is of a player, but they might not fully understand what exactly that means. So with xFIP, it's important to understand that sets the home run, fly ball to home run rate at league average. Yeah. With FIP, it takes into account whatever that pitcher's home run rate was.
Okay,
that goes. Yeah, so then that goes into the rest of the article, because the goal, remember, of MLB organizations is to make projections of what is going to happen in the future. Not what happened in the past, what will happen in the future. And I think with those statistics, with FIP and xFIP, there is a unintended flaw with using just those statistics to make predictions on the next season's ERA. And it comes down to the fundamental formulas to calculating FIP and xFIP. Remember, FIP uses an individual's home run rate from that season, whereas xFIP uses the league average.
Yeah.
And so then this goes back into in the article, and I talk about a little bit of my background. I know that you're a teacher. I just finished up grad school back in April, and during grad school, it's funny enough, I was a teaching assistant as well. And so with that, basically the role that I have, I just was a teacher. They just shoved me at the front of the class, had to teach an introductory statistics course. And during that introductory statistics course, it's funny because all of these flashbacks were coming back. One of the concepts we talked about was called the regression effect. Again, getting a little bit nerdy with the statistics. We will come back to FIP and xFIP in just a minute. But basically what the regression effect does, and it's best explained in an example. So let's say that you have midterms and final exam scores for a class. And let's say all of the students took the midterm score and you have all of their scores, and you want to use their scores to make a prediction of what they're going to score on the final exam. Kind of like how we want to make predictions as far as from one season's ERA to the next season's ERA. So with that, if somebody is in, let's say in the article I mentioned, the 90th percentile in the midterm exam, according to the regression effect, we want to predict that that individual would finish in the 90th percentile on the final exam, we would actually predict that that individual would fall somewhere between the 51st and the 89th percentile, meaning that we would predict that that individual would fall somewhere. We would predict that they would still be above average on the final exam, just closer to whatever the median is, closer to whatever the average is. Same thing is true with the reverse of it. So if you're below at like the 10%, we would predict you be between the 11th and 49th percent, meaning we are predicting that you get closer to the average, but not, which we would still predict that you are below league average.
Right.
Now let's use some baseball analogies with that as well. So with a pitcher like a Sonny Gray, who had the lowest home runs per 9 in Major League Baseball last season, I think it's reasonable to predict that he would still have a low home runs per 9 rate next season. But I don't think it's fair to assume that he's going to have the lowest home runs per 9 total. Meaning, if we are projecting what his home runs per 9 total is, I believe it is somewhere between his actual value, his FIP, and the league average xFIP. I think he's still going to be below league average as far as giving up home runs, meaning he's not going to give up a ton of home runs, just not to the extreme of what he had. And then the other extreme with that would be a guy like a Lance Lynn, who I know Dodgers fans are familiar with him giving up a lot of different home runs, as the Dodgers fan saw. I think it is reasonable to assume that he's not going to give up to the extreme that he did last season, but I think it's also fair to assume that he's still going to be above average, meaning giving up more home runs than an average major league player has in that projection, meaning that during this conversation and using the concept that I taught during an introductory statistics course, the regression effect, I believe if you want to make true predictive values, because the only difference between FIP and xFIP is that home runs per 9, the best prediction would be somewhere between FIP and xFIP, which is the heart of what this article goes after.
Yep. And then, see, I'm the time like Ela Shiva. I'm the type to say, hey, I watched every pitch Lance Lynn threw last year, and you can go back to our podcast, and I told you he was going to give up home runs in the playoffs, and he's going to give home runs next year when he does. I told you. You know why?
Yeah,
I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
I've watched baseball before, and I knew that was – so this is the awesome debate. You know, you have all these awesome statistics, and then I'm with Ela Shiva, where I do kind of wish the Dodgers would say, hey, these statistics are great, but when the game starts, use your eyes, use your intuition, use your gut. You've been around a baseball field, you know, your whole life. You know what you're seeing, so go do it from that perspective. So I think the important thing is here is that you got to figure out a way to incorporate all of it, and not just – you can't just say, hey, we're just going to do everything based off of data. And then I don't think you can do everything saying, hey, we're just going to ignore data and do everything based on your gut. I think it has to be a system of using all of it together.
Yeah, I think you're right there at the end. It has to be a system of using a lot of different factors, because just using these statistics exclusively, which if you read towards the end of the article, looking at some of the adjusted R squared or residual mean squared errors, they don't exactly, or they're not great at exactly predicting the next season's ERA. There is a lot of variance and a lot of error because there are so many different factors that go into this. There can be better ways of going about making these predictions, which is what this article tries to create. It basically takes the middle value between FIP and xFIP and explains why that could be taking 150 pitching seasons, as far as players from the past 2 seasons who pitched at least 250 innings over the course of 2 seasons, and shows that you can make better predictions if you understand the root cause of what each of these statistics have in mind. So with a lot of baseball organizations, with a lot of analytical offices, they're looking for innovative ways to gain even the smallest of edge.
Margin.
those margins make a huge difference. And so when you're talking about all of these different statistics, when you're talking about doing the little things in the cage, the little things actually on the field, all of those small things can make the biggest difference. And so what this article is trying to highlight is a potential fix to try to make the more analytical side, to try to make it a little bit better at predicting, or at least presenting a case where there could potentially be a little bit of a better side, while also understanding where those things come from, but also having the emphasis that the small things that you do can make a huge difference in this. So it's a really unique, really cool article that I haven't seen a whole lot of people necessarily explore, at least as far as a new statistic taking the root of both of those. Certainly there could be other articles similar out there, but I highly recommend kind of taking a look. And if you have any questions on it, absolutely reach out, because we're trying to find different ways to evaluate these guys, different ways to evaluate pitching. And it certainly is fun, especially for me coming from a statistician, to be able to do this. So it was a lot of fun to write.
The article is right there in the chat. Also at the top of the chat is our GoFundMe account. If you'd like to give 50 cents or $1, it's right there. Just click that link. And again, we're trying to start a spring training fund. So, hey, thank you so much for that article, Austin. Thank you for that explanation. That was so fantastic. You know, like I always say, you're able to take these new terminologies that guys like me didn't grow up with. You're able to explain it in a way that we can understand and make sense of, and understand how it works in the game of baseball that we all love so much. So thank you so much for that, Austin. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, obviously with this, there's a lot of different decisions. There could be moves that happen for the Dodgers. So I know Dodgers fans are on the edge of their seat waiting for something to happen with that. It is a fun time during the off season, looking at all of the rumors and stuff. I know a lot of them can be silly at times, but certainly gives us a lot to talk about within the system, not just looking at free agents, but also looking within the system of the future that they have. And looking at that future is something that we should all be doing, and trying to figure out different ways to provide the best future for the Dodgers, both with the guys that they have in system, with innovative ways that we can have towards analyzing these players, our future players, which makes all of this incredibly fun. So definitely keep an eye out for Dodgers Daily. We will be continuing to provide coverage for you throughout the offseason. Check out the article that I wrote, and all of the articles. I know there's been a bunch of different player highlights and stuff that have been posted on there. Definitely go check those out, because those stories are fantastic. A lot of fun stuff happening.
This was a tough show for me. We had to talk about some tough conversations.
I know so there's two things we had to talk about. We had to talk about the 40-man roster and potential cuts, and then we had to do a deep dive into the statistics, and we still were able to generate a crowd with that, which is amazing, and a testament to the audience that we have right there.
We had an awesome crowd today, didn't we?
Oh, we had an amazing crowd. Dipped it a little bit once I got into some of the number stuff, but that happens.
Okay, man, great job. I want to thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we will see you again Friday evening, again, 6 o'clock Pacific. So until then, go Dodgers.